Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. A broad new industrial strategy unveiled by the European Union has at its heart plans to slash bureaucracy and regulation. The wide-ranging strategy aims to make Europe a more attractive place for industry and innovation, with the authorities admitting that the continent has not kept pace with other major economies. One key measure is the proposal to lighten the paperwork load on small and medium-sized businesses by 35% and other firms by 25% by making the process of reporting to the authorities simpler. What is behind this new direction and how does it influence the EU's climate goals? Well, to break this down for us, we're joined by Paweł Wojciechowski. He's former Polish finance minister. Welcome, sir. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's a pleasure. So talk us through the motivation behind this this whole proposal policy incentive.
Well, this is the compass. You can read it, 25 pages.
Okay.
I would call it as a strategic orientation.
Okay.
For the EU, which means the European Parliament, the general, population, for everyone to think about how it would change the European growth model. This is all about. It's not about whether Europe will grow, but how this growth model needs to be changed.
So what are the main elements of it?
Well, the head of the European Commission said, we had a model based on the cheap products imported from China, security outsourced maybe some partially to the United States, and shrinking population, so we could not innovate and we could not develop based on the increasing number of people working. So in fact this was the model in which we would be shrinking. And Mario Draghi said when he was presenting his report, we would be moving into an agony, as Europe. Shrinking in the size of influence in the world, of course, and in terms of prosperity as well. So, in fact, this is a change of gears, I would say, a strategic orientation, because there is three pillars to this in this document. First pillar is pillar on closing the innovation gap. And this is very important. This is all about productivity. If you want to be more productive, we need to have more investments and innovation. And to have more investments, we need to have a better climate, investment climate, which is deregulation. So this is the first pillar. And also there's a talk about, for example, that we do have a lot of savings in Europe, but some of investments are flowing out. And she was talking about we're losing 300 billion of those investments, which they go to the world rather than stay in Europe. So we want those investments to keep in Europe. The second element, of course, is the most difficult one, is this reconciliation of decarbonization together with competitiveness. And there's this discussion about this common path of those two. Some economists see this as an opposition. I truly believe there's not such a great opposition, because there's in fact putting at odds green transition and economic growth is too much. Because the green transition also contributes to the growth, as long as it's not harmful in the sense that we would have too many regulations, for example.
Right.
So this is the...
So there is a tension, but you see it very much as something that can be moderated going forward. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And also, the idea that we need to be more independent and more secure in terms of economic security. This is the third pillar of this, which is called reducing dependencies and increasing economic security, which relies on the concept that we were, of course, very much dependent on cheap fuels from Russia in the past. 40% of imports before the aggression of Russia on Ukraine were coming from Russia. Now, of course, we are less dependent, but we have a high energy prices. At the same time, if we want to transform into green transition, we need to have those mineral rare earths called, which are mainly in China, and there is some restrictions on exports of those rare earths, and then we need to find the sources of those new elements like lithium, for example, in other countries. You know, some of countries in Europe have it, for example, Serbia,
right,
and others, you know, in Africa, for example, or even in Greenland, we talk about.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for laying that out for us. Before we get into the specifics of this, is there something in the geopolitical environment currently happening that has brought the EU to this realization now? Or is it simply an evolution of the EU strategy regarding the economy?
Well, this idea that we need to change the model and the growth model, in fact, almost a paradigm of economic paradigm, came together with 3 reports that were commissioned, especially the Mario Draghi report, which was published in November. So even before the President Trump took office in January. So we have seen this discussion happening in the European circles. The new Commission appointed commissioners and pretty much look at the reports to bring some of the inspiration of what we want to do. In fact, this is the compass, you know, this is the strategic orientation now, what we want to do, a plan for action. So, of course, you know, with the new administration came, the American administration came, there was discussion about, you know, the tariffs, you know, the President Trump says, you know, tariff is the most beautiful word in the English dictionary, we like it, and we've heard about it, you know, how he want to use tariffs against countries which do not, I would say, quotation, obey maybe the United States. So, in fact, you know, we don't know exactly whether we would have the trade war, first of all, because of tariffs and protectionism. Second of all, we would not know how much would this race for technology would develop. You know, Ursula von der Leyen was mentioning in this report that we would have this huge investments in, they call it Giga AI, rather than Mega AI.
Right.
But this is €2 billion. Now, President Trump announced that I think the 3rd day of his office or 5th day of his office, he said we would put on the table 500 billion euros.
Correct. Now,
so,
I mean, it's a different scale altogether, but nonetheless, it certainly shows something about the direction in which the EU wants to move. Now, one of the key elements, as we said in the introduction, was the reduction of the bureaucracy for small and medium-sized businesses. Can you explain to us how that is connected with making the EU a more attractive investment destination and supporting innovation?
Yeah, this is exactly comes as the push was given by the Polish presidents. Actually, the Prime Minister Tusk in the European Parliament said, you know, Europe is known of regulations, okay? We would invent regulations, and then maybe we watch whether the world would adopt them. Now, the world is not doing this anymore, okay? In fact, now the time is for deregulation, okay? Because everybody is saying, including the American administration, forming the new department, you know, that would be managed by Elon Musk, Doge. We would deregulate, okay? As much as, for example, Argentinian President Milei, you know, there's big discussion about that. So, of course, Europe has to move into this direction, but regulations are excessive in some fields. For example, talking about a green transition, we have, for some companies, you know, impose ESG which is special reporting, due diligence on sustainability, some taxonomy, okay, which creates the discussion on what was more kind of sustainable as energy sources and the like. So in fact, we need to move back a little bit, look at those regulations, soften them, because we don't want to hurt competitiveness, okay? So this idea of, neutral technology development is important. So this means that we would look for technologies which are kind of winning the market on market merits, are bankable, can bring investments, rather than to be very much all the time tied in with those regulations of the EU.
Understood.
So we would reduce the level of regulations by 20% on general, and 35% for the small and medium business.
Now, one of the challenges, of course, we've already mentioned and you've addressed is the tension between the climate goals and the competitive goals. And countries within the EU have differing approaches to those tensions. How do you see these companies aligning under this EU kind of umbrella, if you like, the strategic shift that you've explained? Last few seconds.
First of all, 70% of the regulations which come to Poland, for example, are coming from the EU.
Right.
So we would have to look at whether we, for example, in Poland, whether we would have this called EU +0 regulations, which we would not do the gold plating. We would not add anything extra. Second of all, we would need to look on the reviews, for example, of some directives, okay, like carbon directive on carbon leakage. Maybe it's too complicated, for the companies to accept, because companies need to know where's the source of the merchandise or the services provided by company who's exporting to the EU. At the same time, finding out what is the carbon emissions of this company, where they come from. So it's very complex. So we need to kind of go down with those excessive regulations, at the same time keeping the objective of Green Deal, which means one goal, as we have in the past, and we have different rules.
Different rules, understood. Well, complex picture. Thank you very much for laying out some of this, and we look forward to inviting you back for more analysis. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. And that's all from us for this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.